The store was ordinary in the way New York's magic often hides overhead fluorescent lights humming like tired bees, carts rattling over tiles, a Friday afternoon crowd shuffling toward weekend dinners. Yet for Adrian Hale, the world stilled on a single syllable. Dad, not shouted, not even fully confident. Just a small breath-thin call that sliced through the aisle between granola bars and breakfast cereal. Adrian turned, expecting a mistake. Children cried Dad all the time in grocery stores, echoes thrown into the air, seeking any familiar back to cling to. But the boy looking up at him wasn't confused. Not really. He was searching, as if hope, uninvited, but stubborn, had tugged his chin up. He couldn't have been more than 5. Skin the shade of summer bronze, curls loose like tiny question marks, big eyes holding a soft glimmer as though the world, to him, was still something to discover rather than protect against. And around his wrist, delicate but certain, was a braided cord the color of deep ocean blue, with a streak of green glimmering like tide pulling against light. Adrian's breath faltered. That cord. Suddenly the grocery store's hum dropped away, leaving only the dull thud of his pulse. He had tied that cord when he was 16, restless one summer afternoon by the Pacific. He remembered the slight burn of rope against fingers, the satisfaction of the knot, an old sailor's knot his grandfather had once shown him. A knot for staying, lad, not running. He had kept it for years. A pocket-sized memory of salt wind and second chances. 5 years ago, in the fevered tremble of heartbreak and accusations and silence, he'd left it on a table in a Brooklyn studio filled with silver dust and jazz. Left it in her studio. Left it with her, Maya Carter. And then she stepped into the aisle. Time didn't stop this time. It simply folded. She stood 10 feet away, one hand frozen on the handle of a shopping cart, the other reaching gently, instinctively, toward the boy. A woman carved from velvet resolve and quiet storms, her skin warm and rich as mahogany polished by care. Her hair braided close and neat, as though each plait held a story. Same long lashes, same mouth soft curve, stubborn line, same air. That fragile combination of fierce determination and fragile tenderness. 5 years, and she was still the most magnetic thing in any room. The boy looked at her, then back to Adrian. Confusion flickered. Embarrassment followed. I'm sorry, the child whispered, cheeks warming. I thought. Maya's hand landed on the boy's shoulder. Protective, but not panicked, gentle armor. It's okay. Zion, she murmured, voice low, steady. Then she looked at Adrian fully, and the world's air changed temperature. Warmer, colder. He couldn't tell. Just different. She hadn't expected to see him. That much was obvious. For a second, behind her eyes, something trembled: recognition, memory, fear, maybe even tenderness. Before a practiced calm slid over her like a shawl. Adrian. His name on her tongue, he had forgotten it could sound that way. Not accusing yet, not inviting. Just real. Like an echo of something they used to share. Maya. His voice was steady, but his hand tightened on the cart handle. There were speeches he had prepared in dreams, apologies crafted and torn apart, but the moment stole language. All he had were truths without sentences. Zion tugged gently at Maya's fingers. Mom, I didn't mean, I know. She squeezed back. We're okay. He blinked. Mom, the child's curls, his eyes, the cord. A tremor crawled through Adrian's ribs, small, but undeniable. He did not allow it to shape itself into hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope was what had broken him last time. Hope and pride and a silence he had mistaken for protection. "You look well," he managed. A lie. She didn't look well. She looked stronger, sharper, as though life had carved her edges and polished her core. A woman who learned to stand alone even when she once thought she had someone to stand beside her. "You look the same," she said. He almost smiled. "I don't know if that's good or bad. It's neither." Her eyes held his, steady, just a fact. Then a pause, quiet but heavy. "I didn't plan to see you again." The boy Zion peeked up at them, his chest rising with the anxious hush children carry when they sense adult history, but don't understand it. Adrian crouched down slightly, instinctively leveling with him. "No harm done," he told him softly. "Sometimes our eyes hope faster than our brains do." Zion blinked. "Processing. I like this rope," he said suddenly, showing the blue cord. "It's old. That makes it special." Maya inhaled sharply, just enough for Adrian to see. He swallowed. "It is special," Adrian whispered back. "At least, it was once. A beat." Then she spoke, voice measured. "Zion loves finding forgotten things. He found that in a box of old belongings in Atlanta." The hesitation around the lie was soft, but there, not deceitful, protective. Their world felt balanced on a wire between spoken and unspoken. "I see." He stood again. "It suits him." Zion grinned, a bright, uncomplicated thing that punched sunlight straight through Adrian's ribs. A version of childhood untouched by adult wreckage. Adrian hoped fiercely it would stay that way. Outside, winter's sunlight poured through storefront windows in thin sheets, scattering across concrete like shaken salt. People hurried, tired and hungry and loud, unaware that, in aisle 9, 2 lives had cracked open a seam. "How have you been?" Adrian asked softly. Maya's throat moved once. "We're all right. Stable. Safe." Words chosen carefully. Like beads strung with intent. Safe. The last time he'd seen her. She wasn't. Not from lies, nor rumors, nor grief too heavy to carry, nor the loneliness of being believed too late. He had believed her eventually, but late belief can feel like betrayal. "I'm glad," he said, meaning it with a weight he could barely carry. "And you?" she asked. Polite distance in her tone, as if she were speaking to a stranger at an airport lounge. Not the man she once let kiss, morning into her collarbone. "I've been building, fixing what I broke, and what others broke." His jaw tensed, trying to be better than I was then. She nodded once. No praise, no accusation. A simple acknowledgement that time passes and people change, whether slowly or suddenly. Zion shifted his feet. "Mom, can we go get the strawberries now?" "The sweet ones, of course." Maya's voice warmed for him alone. She turned the cart. "Goodbye, Adrian." He should have let her go then. Let the moment dissolve into the hum of checkout scanners and the smell of bakery bread. But his voice rose before caution could stop him. "Maya." She stopped. Her shoulders stiffened just enough to show she remembered every version of his voice, gentle, angry, hopeful, breaking. He stepped closer, just one step. Respectful distance, still between them. "I never wanted your life to get harder because of me. It didn't get harder because of you." Her gaze, slid over him, not cold, but cutting through nostalgia like a scalpel. It got clearer, and clarity is rarely painless. He exhaled. I wish. Don't. She shook her head gently. Words don't fix glass once it's shattered. He studied her face, the strength, the weariness, the grace she had earned like scars. Sometimes, he murmured, they can stitch pieces so the light comes through differently. Her expression flickered. Sometimes. But stitches still need time. Outside, a car horn blared. A baby cried. A cashier laughed. The world was too alive to accommodate two ghosts revisiting their graveyard. Zion tugged again. Mom. Yes. Sweetheart. We're going. For a moment, she looked at Adrian, really looked. Not at the billionaire on magazine covers. Not at the man who once hesitated and lost her. But at the human piece standing in front of her, holding quiet regret. Take care of yourself, she said softly. For your sake, not mine. He nodded. And you two take care of each other. We already do. She guided Zion away, her palm wide and sure over his small back. They walked past freezers humming with cold air, towards citrus and warmth. Every step away tightened something in Adrian's chest, like an invisible cord. At the automatic doors, Zion looked back once. A tiny wave, hesitant but sweet. A child's forgiveness offered, without knowing what it cost. Adrian raised his hand in return. Then they were gone. Only the faint sway of that ocean blue cord remained in the air, like a ripple refusing to settle. Adrian didn't move for a long moment. The world came rushing back, the crackle of shopping bags. A man arguing over coupons. Distant horns. Life carrying on. But inside him, something quiet and old had woken up. A heartbeat he thought he'd muted. A responsibility he no longer had the right to claim, yet couldn't walk away from. He placed both hands on the cart, grounding himself. If that boy is mine, then I have already missed too much. But this time, he would not build walls out of fear or duty or pride. If fate had cracked open the door again, he would not slam it shut with silence. He took one breath, then another. When he finally left the store, the sky had shifted late afternoon, stretching into gold-rimmed dusk. A nearby church bell chimed the half-hour. Somewhere across the city, two people he once loved sat down to dinner, unaware of the vow quietly forming in him. Tomorrow, he would find the courage he once lacked. Tomorrow, he would start with a conversation not about the past, but about the boy with hope in his eyes and an ocean blue cord on his wrist. And in that vow, a quiet storm gathered not of anger, but of return. Across the river in a small apartment, Maya locked the blue cord in a drawer that still smelled faintly of silver dust and whispered a truth Zion would one day need. Some knots are meant to hold. Some are meant to be undone. The apartment was small but warm, perched on the third floor of a brownstone in Harlem, where ivy curled around rusted iron railings and the evenings smelled faintly of cumin and rain. Maya turned the key softly, careful not to wake the city that pulsed beneath her. Zion was quiet, unusually so, his little hand sticky with the juice of a tangerine and the weight of something he didn't yet know how to name. She set the groceries on the counter and crouched to help him remove his shoes. You okay? Bug, she asked gently. He nodded, but didn't speak. He was 5, but Maya had long known that grief and confusion don't ask your age. They settle where they will. She ran a hand over his curls, feeling the thin tension coiled just beneath his small shoulders. Want to help me pick out pasta or rice for dinner ice? He mumbled, and walked to the window seat where he often watched buses lumber by, like tired giants. Maya straightened and exhaled into the silence. Her fingers trembled as they reached for the cord drawer. She didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she stirred a pot of jasmine rice. Let music curl from a speaker low on the shelf, a quiet saxophone. Coltrane, maybe. The sound of home, the smell of nutty rice calmed her hands, but not her thoughts. She hadn't seen Adrian in 5 years. 5. In that time, she had grown from anger to acceptance, from ache to resilience. She had built a life not perfect, but honest. Taught jewelry design at a nonprofit workshop, paid rent, raised a boy who asked kind questions, smiled at strangers and learned to sleep again. But today, that cord on Zion's wrist, the way Adrian's eyes had searched hers not to reclaim, not to excuse, but to understand, it unnerved her. It shouldn't have. Zion padded back into the kitchen, his hands now busy with a toy spaceship. Can we have mango after dinner? If you eat all your rice? With peas, of course. He grinned, a flash of light, uncomplicated and swift. She brushed a kiss over his forehead. Heart tugged between joy and fear. How long could this stay simple? That night, after dishes were stacked and Zion was tucked under his dinosaur print blanket, Maya sat alone in the small studio corner where she sometimes designed in the quiet. Under the desk, a battered drawer still bore the scent of old solder and polish. It creaked open reluctantly, revealing scraps of wire, a broken watch, a small velvet pouch, and the truth she had buried in metal and dust. She lifted the pouch, opened it. Inside a second cord, its twin once meant for Adrian. They had braided them together in her studio late one night, years ago, tipsy on red wine and laughter, before anything broke, before silence replaced words. You and me, he'd said, a matched set. But nothing stays symmetrical. She laid the cords side by side, one still pristine in its pouch, the other on Zion's wrist, already loved into fray. Her phone buzzed. Adrian Hale. She hesitated. Her thumb hovered, unsure whether she wanted to erase the name or read the message. Would you be open to talking? Just you and me? No expectations. I just need to hear what I never gave you the space to say. Maya stared at the screen for a long time. She thought of how much she had wanted to scream at him back then. How the silence after the smear campaign had felt like betrayal, carved in stone. How she had waited, and then stopped. Was there still a wound under the scar? She typed, "We can meet, but I need boundaries." This is not a chapter I'm interested in rewriting. His reply came faster than she expected. Understood. Saturday. There's a place in Harlem, Sable and Bloom. Quiet. Good tea. Maya smirked despite herself. He remembered she didn't drink coffee. She closed the drawer, placing the second cord back where memory belonged. Maybe this was just closure. Maybe. Saturday arrived soft and gray, the kind of day that wrapped buildings in mist and made time feel slower. Sable and Bloom was tucked between a florist and a second-hand bookshop, its windows fogged with warmth and the scent of steeped hibiscus. Adrian was already there when she entered. Of course he was. He rose when he saw her, dressed in charcoal, nothing loud or branded. For a man whose net worth regularly appeared in Forbes, he had learned how to move like a person rather than a headline. He looked tired. Not unwell, just weathered. As if the past years had etched lines not only around his eyes, but beneath them. "Thanks for coming," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." Maya sat down. Neither was I. A pause. The server came. She ordered hibiscus. He ordered hot water with lemon. It struck her. Then, how different this was from the fantasy arguments she used to have with him in her head. There was no fire, just ash, and something tentative beneath it. I never knew, he began, eyes fixed on the table. About Zion. Maya didn't flinch. You didn't ask. I didn't know there was a question I needed to ask. She nodded once. Exactly. He looked up. That sounds like a terrible excuse now. It is. A silence. Not tense. Heavy. But not cruel. Adrian leaned back, his hands clasped. I believed I was doing the noble thing, stepping back, giving you space to clear your name. I thought my silence was protective. It wasn't. Maya said softly. It was abandonment, dressed in logic. He swallowed. I see that now, and I regret it more than I can say. Regret doesn't erase consequences. No. But maybe it's a place to start understanding them. The server returned. Steam rose between them, like breath made visible. Maya watched him, trying to separate the man she once loved from the man who had vanished. But maybe they were never two people. Maybe that was the problem. Why now, she asked. Adrian answered without hesitation. Because when Zion looked at me, I felt something I hadn't felt in 5 years, like I belonged somewhere I didn't even know existed. And I realized I've been building towers to distract myself from everything I left buried. She didn't respond. She didn't know how. Instead, she asked the question that had sat heavy on her chest for years. Did you ever believe it? Adrian's jaw tensed. The rumors, no. Not really. But I doubted. Not because I thought you were capable of what they said, but because I was afraid of being wrong in front of the board, the press, everyone. And I hated myself for that fear. That was the worst part. Not that he had disbelieved her, but that he had made her carry the burden of proving herself when she should have been shielded. I loved you, she said quietly, and you disappeared when I needed you loud. I know. He didn't ask if she still loved him. He didn't have the right. She sipped her tea. Outside. A bus pulled away from the curb. A little boy pressed to the window, waving at no one in particular. Maya looked at Adrian. Zion is kind. He's curious. He loves dragons and mangoes and believes all moms have superpowers. You don't get to disrupt that unless you're willing to stay consistently, quietly, without expectation. I don't want to replace anything or anyone. He doesn't have a dad, she said carefully. He has me. That's not a complaint. It's a fact. Adrian nodded. Then maybe he can have a friend who shows up. They sat with that, with the complicated but fragile idea of beginning again, not where they left off, but somewhere completely new. Eventually, Maya stood. Thank you for the tea. Thank you for the truth. She reached into her coat pocket, pulled out something small, and placed it on the table. A folded note. Inside was the second cord, the one she'd never given back. No promises, she said. Just possibility. If you earn it. Adrian looked down at the cord, and in his eyes, something softened. Outside. Harlem exhaled the scent of early spring warm concrete, budding trees, and wet iron. As Maya walked away, she didn't feel triumphant or broken, just real. Behind her. Adrian tied the cord loosely around his wrist. It wasn't a knot for staying. Not yet. But it wasn't one for running either. Back home. Zion clutched his sketch pad, drawing a dragon with blue cord wrapped around its leg. "Mom," he asked, "if a dragon had two homes, would it still know where to fly?" Maya looked at him. "I think. Dragons follow who they trust. Not just where the spirit headquarters sat like a cathedral in downtown Manhattan's steel bones, glass walls, and a lobby that echoed with intention. It was the kind of space where ambition had a scent, polished stone, strong coffee, and paper just warmed from the printer. On the 23rd floor, Maya Carter stood in heels she hadn't worn in 3 years, facing the city like an old lover she hadn't decided to forgive. Her palms were dry, her pulse calm. Only her breath betrayed her slow, deliberate, as if she were walking into a room where memory lived just behind the walls. This was her first day as creative director of Spirit, a role she never thought she'd hold. Especially not in a building partially owned by Adrian Hale's investment group. The irony wasn't lost on her. She hadn't told Zion. To him, this was Mom's new job that makes jewelry for grown-ups, which was fair enough. What she hadn't explained was that the job came with ghosts, ones who wore suits and left promises unsigned. Still, this was hers now. Her studio space overlooked the East River, light pouring in like forgiveness. Tools lined one wall: hammers, files, precision torches, wire cutters. Not shiny props, real tools. She touched one, a forming stake, and smiled faintly. Something about metal comforted her. It didn't lie. It bent or broke, but it never pretended. Her assistant, Celine, a fresh-faced intern with nose piercings and the hopeful energy of someone not yet disappointed by systems, knocked once and entered. "There's a meeting in conference room B," she said, voice light but eyes watchful. "Investor review. They want to see early sketches." Maya nodded, sliding her sketch pad into a leather folder. "Thanks. You can breathe. By the way, I'm not made of fire." Celine grinned. Yet. The conference room smelled like citrus and tension. Seated already were 3 men, 1 woman, all of them wearing the uniform of Power Navy. Black. Intentional silence. Adrian was not yet there. Maya settled into her seat, spine straight, the way her grandmother taught her. "If they want you small, stretch taller, Ms. Carter." The man to her left began, "Thank you for joining. We're eager to see how Spirit will shift under your creative direction." "I'm eager to show you," she said evenly, unfolding the sketchbook like a ritual. The pages told a story, the new collection titled Stitch, an homage to visible mending, to breaks made beautiful, fine gold thread drawn through fractured silver, earrings shaped like healed bones, pendants that mimicked scar tissue, imperfect, resilient. One board member cleared his throat. "It's honest. It's real." Maya replied, "And I believe luxury is finally ready to tell the truth." The woman at the end of the table nodded. "There's poetry in it. You're proposing beauty with memory." Maya's eyes softened. "Exactly." And then the door opened. Adrian walked in, apologetic but unhurried. He didn't glance at her immediately, which was a small mercy. Instead, he reviewed the sketch pad as it was passed down the line. When he finally looked up, his expression was unreadable. "Strong concept," he said quietly. "Risky, but timely. Imperfection with precision." Maya met his gaze. "That's what people are. Adrian. Precise chaos." A pause. Then let's make that our headline, he said. The meeting adjourned shortly after, and as people stood, gathering laptops and polite nods, Adrian lingered. "Can I speak with you?" he asked. She didn't move. "You're speaking now, in private." She considered, then nodded once. They found an unused office nearby glass walls, a door that clicked shut like a sealed confession. Adrian stood by the window. "I didn't know you'd use Stitch. It was already in me," she said, "long before you offered me a title." He turned. "It's beautiful." She shrugged. "It's truth, wrapped in metal." Silence again, but not the kind that ached. A quieter kind, like the breath before saying something real. "I'm glad you're here," he said. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Are you glad because it makes spirit look progressive? Or because your guilt feels lighter?" Adrian flinched. "Because I believe in what you do. And yes, because I regret the years we lost. But that's mine to carry, not yours to soothe." Maya watched him carefully. She didn't need apologies anymore. She needed alignment. "I'm not here for redemption arcs," she said. "I'm here to create, to lead, and to protect my son. Everything else is background noise." He nodded slowly. "Then I'll be quiet." She almost laughed at that. But the truth was, he had been quieter. Not distant, just careful. Emails were concise, meetings respectful. No late-night messages. No reaching. Adrian was learning the difference between presence and pressure. She appreciated that more than she expected. As she turned to leave, he spoke again. "There's something I didn't get to say last time," he said. She paused. He reached into his pocket and took out the cord she'd given him. "I didn't wear this for years. Couldn't. Not until I knew I deserved the weight of it." She swallowed, throat dry. And now she asked, softly. "I wear it as a reminder," he said, "that some knots are promises, even when they come undone." Maya didn't respond. She just looked at him, really looked, for the first time in years. He wasn't the man who left. He was the man trying not to leave again. She didn't know what that meant yet, but she was listening. That night, Zion sat at the kitchen table with a sketchpad open and tongue pressed to his cheek in concentration. He was drawing a dragon massive, purple-scaled, wings like broken umbrellas mended with string. Maya chopped vegetables at the counter, stealing glances. "Mom," he said suddenly, "do dragons get to pick where they live?" She paused. "You mean like which mountain or cave?" "No. I mean like, can a dragon live in two places and still remember where to go?" She knelt beside him, brushing a curl from his forehead. "I think dragons follow where they're loved," she said. "That's how they know which sky to fly in." He nodded thoughtfully, adding a small cord around the dragon's ankle. "Is that its bracelet?" she asked. Zion grinned. "It's to remind him that he can go far, but always come back." She kissed his temple. Sometimes the deepest truths lived in drawings and dragons. And in that quiet evening, beneath humming kitchen lights and a simmering pot of soup, Maya felt something shift. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe for the first time in 5 years, she could imagine a future that didn't have to erase the past to feel safe. And that was something. Adrian stood outside a bookstore the next day, holding a wrapped gift for Zion, a science kit with miniature solar panels. He didn't know if he'd be invited in, but for once, he was okay waiting on the sidewalk. The gift was modest, thoughtful, he hoped. A sleek little science kit with buildable solar panels, circuits, and biodegradable batteries, child-safe. endlessly explorable. He'd had it wrapped in brown craft paper, tied with a cobalt blue string, no shiny ribbons, no price tag, just care, distilled into simple gestures. Adrian stood on the sidewalk outside Maya's building, his breath fogging slightly in the late March chill. His coat was open, fingers bare despite the wind. The gift tucked under one arm, like it might fly away if he held it too tightly. He hadn't been invited in. Not yet. But that was the thing about this new version of his life. He was finally learning how to wait. He glanced up at the third-floor windows. He didn't know which one belonged to Zion. He didn't need to. Just being there, even below the light, was enough. The intercom buzz startled him. Adrian Maya's voice crackled softly through the speaker. He stepped closer. Hey. Yeah. I didn't want to assume, so I stayed down here. A pause. Come up. 2 words. Not a welcome, not a warning. Just a door opened. He buzzed in, the lock clicking like a tentative heartbeat. On the way up, his boots scuffed softly against the stairs. Each step was measured like entering a temple built from both ache and grace. When the door opened, Zion stood there first. He grinned. You came? Adrian smiled. I did. Can I come in? Zion nodded furiously and stepped aside, already tugging him by the hand toward the kitchen. Mom's making grilled cheese, but the fancy kind with the cheese that stretches like a spider web. Maya appeared in the hallway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes found Adrian's not with suspicion, but with watchfulness. Hi. He lifted the gift slightly. Just a small something. I saw it and thought of him. She nodded once, and he handed it off, careful not to brush her fingers. The space between them was fragile and necessary. Zion had already opened the paper on the floor, his fingers working at the tape with a surgeon's precision. When he saw the box inside, his face lit like sunrise. Solar panels. These actually work. They do, Adrian said, crouching beside him. You can power a fan, even a tiny lamp. Can we build it now, Mom? Can we? Maya's voice was calm. After dinner. And you'll need help reading the instructions. Zion held up the box toward Adrian, hopeful. Will you help? Adrian hesitated. He looked at Maya. She held his gaze for a beat, then gave a small nod. All right, Adrian said, after grilled spider cheese. Zion giggled. Victorious. Dinner was chaotic in the way good family evenings can be soup-sloshed. Cheese stretched into impossible strings. Laughter bubbled without filter. Adrian watched Zion more than he ate. The boy's joy was quick and honest. He had Maya's focus, her curiosity, her light, and his eyes. Adrian felt it again, the ache of all the moments he'd missed. First steps, first words, first scraped knee. But guilt had no room here. Only presence mattered now. After dishes were cleared, Zion dragged the box to the living room carpet. Maya watched from the couch, nursing a cup of tea, fingers curled protectively around the ceramic. Step 1. Adrian read aloud. Unfold the instruction sheet. Zion did, holding it open like a treasure map. Step 2. Attach solar plate to microbattery. Adrian guided him carefully, letting small hands fumble and learn. It took 20 minutes just to fit the first wire. When the tiny fan finally spun with a faint whir, Zion's eyes widened like he'd summoned the wind. I made light, he whispered. Reverent. You did, Adrian said softly. Maya looked away, blinking too quickly. Later, Zion yawned wide and sprawled across Maya's lap like a cat. Time for bed, little man, she murmured, stroking his curls. Can Adrian tuck me in? Silence. Maya paused, caught between instinct and trust. Adrian didn't move. I'll sit nearby, she said finally, and listen from the hall. Zion tugged his hand. Come on. It's just over here. The boys' room was a galaxy in miniature glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, a mobile of planets, books stacked like constellations. Adrian sat on the floor beside the bed. The comforter pulled up to Zion's chin. Do you want a story? He asked. Zion shook his head. Can I ask a question? Of course. Were you scared when you found out you were my dad? Adrian exhaled. Yes. Very. Why? Because I didn't know how to be one. I missed so much. I thought maybe I didn't deserve to try. Zion was quiet, then whispered, You came back, though. I did. Promise you won't leave again. Adrian reached forward, gently brushing the boy's shoulder. I promise to try with everything I have. Zion nodded. Okay. Maya stood just outside the doorway, her breath caught like a leaf in the wind. She didn't cry, but something inside her softened, then unraveled quietly. Back in the living room, Adrian stood by the door, coat in hand. The warmth of dinner still clung to the air, the scent of grilled cheese and trust, not yet cooled. I didn't expect all this, he said, voice low. Maya sat on the arm of the couch. What did you expect? He shrugged. Maybe a conversation, a wall, a warning. Not this. This wasn't for you, she replied. It was for Zion. Adrian nodded. And you? She looked at him, long and still. I'm watching. He met her gaze. What do you see? That's the point, she said. I don't know yet. He stepped closer. Just once. I want to be part of his world. Maya, whatever that looks like, without disrupting yours. You already disrupted mine, she said gently. Years ago. He winced. But, she added, that doesn't mean there's no road back. They stood there, not touching, not rushing, just breathing the same air. Good night, he said. Good night, Adrian. As he left, Maya walked to the kitchen, rinsed Zion's cup, and looked out the window. Down on the street, Adrian stood for a moment, as if anchoring himself to the earth. Then he looked up just briefly, and she didn't move. She let him look. Then she closed the curtain. The next morning, an email appeared in Maya's inbox. Subject, Co-parenting proposal, from Adrian Hale. Hi Maya. Thank you again for yesterday. I'd like to propose we work out a structured schedule: visits, school involvement, healthcare, media boundaries. I know this is your terrain, and I want to respect that. Can we meet this week to start drafting something? Even informally, warmly. Adrian. She read it twice, then again. No grand speeches, no demands, just clarity, intent. A step forward. She clicked reply. Subject, co-parenting proposal. Hi Adrian. Yes. Wednesday at the studio. 6 p.m. I'll bring the first draft. Maya. She stared at the blinking cursor for a long moment, then added one final line. P.S. Zion slept like a dragon in his den. Thank you. Wednesday evening, as Maya gathers the printed parenting plan and waits in the studio. Her phone lights up with a news alert. Tainted Legacy Spirit Creative Director, linked to former scandal involving Adrian Hale. And suddenly, The past isn't just memory. It's clawing back into the room. The studio smelled like bergamot and solder. A warm light bled across the concrete floor, casting Maya's silhouette long and quiet against the wall. Her hands, usually sure, trembled slightly as she adjusted the stack of papers on the drafting table. A simple co-parenting agreement. Boundaries. Schedules. Health permissions. School drop-offs. Clean. Civil. Necessary. She glanced at the clock. 04. Adrian wasn't late yet, but the seconds had begun to lengthen, stretching like wire just before it snaps. Her phone buzzed. She reached for it, expecting him. Instead, her screen lit up with a news alert. Tainted Legacy Spirit's new creative director, once linked to Hale scandal. Below the headline was a cropped image of her, 5 years younger, eyes caught mid-blink, stepping out of a cab in front of Adrian's building. Another shot showed them laughing at an art gala, an expression Maya hadn't worn in years. She didn't click the article. She didn't have to. The bile of déjà vu rose in her throat before she could stop it. The cold edge of being misunderstood, of having her story told without her voice. Again. She lowered the phone slowly and stared at the parenting plan beneath her fingertips. The words blurred. Pickup times. Emergency contacts. Medical consent. All so adult. So rational. So breakable. The studio door opened quietly. Adrian stepped in, his coat still damp from a surprise spring drizzle. The collar turned up. "I came as soon as I saw it," he said, breath tight. "I didn't want you to see that alone." Maya didn't look at him right away. She stood still, one hand still resting on the stack of papers. "How bad is it?" she asked. He moved closer, gently placing his phone beside hers, already open to the article. The headlines were loud, but the substance thin. Speculation. Old photos. An unnamed former colleague offering whispers about favoritism, timing, and how the spirit board was possibly misled. "They don't have anything new," he said. "But they don't need to." "No," Maya replied softly. "They never did." He swallowed hard. "I've already asked legal to issue a statement. Spirit will stand by you. And I will too." Maya finally turned to him. There was no anger in her face, just exhaustion, deep and dignified, like someone who had spent years keeping her own boat from capsizing, only to find another storm waiting on shore. "It's not about who stands by me, Adrian," she said. "It's about the pattern." He nodded, but she continued before he could speak. "I disappeared once already because of this, because I was reduced to a headline, a scandal. Not a person, not a professional, not a mother, just a story in someone else's mouth." "I know," he said quietly. "No, you don't." Her voice cracked. Not from volume, but from holding back. "You watched it happen. And now, the second I rise again before I even get to show what I can do, someone tries to drag me back into your shadow." He stepped closer, not to touch, but to ground himself in her gravity. "I will protect you this time." Maya shook her head. "I'm not asking for protection. I'm asking for space, for the right to stand alone." Adrian's jaw tensed. "So what do you want me to do?" She looked down at the parenting plan again. "I want to do this right," she said, "for Zion. I want to raise him with intention and stability. I want him to be proud of both his parents, even if they never belong in the same sentence outside of him." He nodded slowly. "But," she added, "we can't move forward if the world still thinks I'm your secret, your mistake, or your PR liability. You're none of those things. But I was to someone, and those whispers, no matter how faint, they find ears. They always do. Adrian sat down across from her at the drafting table. He looked tired in a new way, not from lack of sleep, but from the cost of awareness, of learning, finally, how much his silence once cost her. What if we go public, he said. Not as a couple, but as co-parents. Partners in raising Zion. Transparent. Clear. Together. But not romantically entangled. Maya considered it. A photo op? No. A story. Our story. Told our way. Not defensive. Just honest. Her brow furrowed. You think the world wants honesty? I think Zion deserves it. And I think maybe we do too. She exhaled. The kind that reaches down through years of swallowed words. I'll think about it, she said. That was enough. Adrian picked up the parenting plan and began reading through it, marking notes, nodding in agreement. They spent the next hour in a rhythm neither expected co-authors of something fragile, real, imperfect. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't nostalgic. It was something braver. At 7:30, Maya stood and stretched. I have to pick up fabric samples from the supplier, she said, gathering her coat. You okay to lock up? Of course. She paused at the door. Thank you for showing up. I always will. Adrian replied. She smiled faintly. Not always, but maybe. Starting now. Outside. The rain had slowed to a fine mist, the city glowing like a candle seen through frosted glass. Maya pulled her hood up and walked down the street, shoulders high, heels steady. Across the street, a woman stood under a broken umbrella, staring at her phone. She looked up as Maya passed, recognition flickering in her eyes. Maya kept walking. She was not a headline. Not tonight. Adrian stayed behind, flipping through the parenting plan again, now annotated in both their hands. His phone buzzed. This time, it wasn't news. It was a message from Zion's preschool teacher. Hi, just confirming Adrian is reading to the class next Friday. Zion's very excited and already picked the book, Dragons Who Build Solar Farms. Adrian smiled. Then, without thinking too long, he replied, confirmed. Can't wait. Tell him to save me a seat next to the stuffed turtle. When he put the phone down, he realized something unexpected had begun to settle inside him. Not closure, not triumph. Peace. Not because the world had changed, but because he had. Back at her apartment, Maya tucked Zion into bed. He blinked up at her with curious eyes. Mom, why do people on the news make up stories? She hesitated, then sat down beside him. Sometimes, she said, people are afraid of what they don't understand, or they're bored, or they think they need to make noise to be seen. Were they talking about you? He didn't lie. Yes. Did you do anything bad? Zion nodded, satisfied. Okay. He turned on his side, pulling the comforter over his shoulder. Tell them I said to stop. Maya kissed his forehead. You just did. At the school event. Zion beams as Adrian reads about solar dragons, while Maya captures the moment on an old film camera. Across the room, a reporter lingers, pretending to be a parent. And Maya must decide, does she reclaim the narrative now, or let her silence be written for her? Once more, the school gymnasium smelled of finger paint, pencil shavings, and apple juice in paper cups. Rows of miniature chairs lined the parquet floor, each one occupied by a parent, guardian, or distracted sibling. At the front, beneath a banner that read, Readers are Leaders, A folding chair waited. Too small for any grown-up. Too serious for any child. Adrian sat in that chair, knees awkwardly high, a book in his lap. Dragons Who Build Solar Farms. Zion's pick. Worn at the edges and lovingly dog-eared. The illustration on the cover was whimsical, a green-scaled dragon with goggles and a hard hat, holding a wrench in one claw and a solar panel in the other. Zion sat cross-legged beside him, eyes wide and proud, wearing a makeshift dragon tail made from green construction paper and glitter glue. When Adrian started reading, Zion mouthed the words silently. He'd memorized them, clearly. Maya stood near the back, camera in hand. She hadn't planned to use the old Leica again. It was her father's. She used to believe it only captured truth. These days, she wasn't sure that existed in images anymore. But something about today, about her son's face, about the stillness in Adrian's voice as he read aloud, about the feeling of a room filled with people who weren't yet looking at her like a headline, made her lift the viewfinder to her eye. Click. The shutter sound was soft, but final. She caught Zion's smile, mid-laugh. Adrian, leaning into the story, animating with his hands. The two of them reflected in the varnished floor, like a portrait that wasn't posed, but belonged. She lowered the camera slowly. Near the snack table, a woman she hadn't seen before tilted her head and smiled too broadly. "Your husband's a natural," the woman said. Maya's stomach tightened. She turned. "He's not," then stopped. The woman's smile sharpened slightly. "I'm sorry. I'm Mia, Alex's mom." She gestured vaguely toward the crowd of identical 5-year-olds wearing foam dragon wings. "Nice to meet you." Maya returned a careful smile. "I'm Maya. Well, Maya. It's lovely to see both parents show up, especially these days. That's rare." Maya caught the glint in the woman's eye, observant, practiced, too polite to be casual. The camera around her neck suddenly felt heavier. Something in her stilled. "Excuse me," she said gently, walking away, pulse flickering against her collarbone. Later, outside the school, Adrian zipped Zion's hoodie while the boy chattered about how dragons should really use wind turbines too. Maya knelt beside him, brushing chalk dust from his knee. "You were amazing," she said. Zion beamed. "Mom, can Adrian come with us for smoothies?" She paused, looked at Adrian. He smiled, but didn't answer, waiting for her. "Sure," she said, voice light. "Just one condition, no glitter in the car this time." Zion made a face. "But it's dragon dust." They all laughed, briefly, completely. At the smoothie shop, Maya let Adrian order. She stood near the entrance, distracted, fingers sliding over the camera's back like a worry stone. That woman's tone still buzzed in her ears. Later that night, after Zion fell asleep with dragon wings still tied around his waist, she plugged the camera into her laptop and uploaded the photos. One in particular stood out. Adrian looking down at Zion with a look she hadn't seen on him before, not the proud expression of a man seeing his bloodline reflected, but something gentler, something reverent, like Adrian had stopped chasing the life he was supposed to build and started honoring the one that had built itself in his absence. She stared at that photo a long time. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered cautiously. "Ms. Carter." The voice was cool, professional. "This is Elise Harmon, senior editor at The Modern Form. We've followed your work for years, and the Stitch collection has generated incredible interest." Maya straightened. "Thank you. We'd love to feature you in our summer profile series, Mothers Who Make." spotlighting creatives balancing motherhood and industry innovation. Maya hesitated. That's flattering. We'd also like to include a piece on your dynamic with Adrian Hale. The co-parenting story. Your re-emergence in the design world. The scandal from 5 years ago. How you rose beyond it. It's an incredible narrative. There it was. Narrative. Not truth. Not consent. Not care. Just packaging. I'm not interested in revisiting that story, she said evenly. That narrative cost me more than any of you will ever print. Elise chuckled lightly, like someone negotiating a higher bid. Maya, with respect, the story already exists. Wouldn't you rather shape it yourself? She didn't answer. Think about it. Elise continued. Our photographer, Mia, already captured some lovely images today. We could really... Maya ended the call. The silence after was louder than anything Elise had said. She called Adrian. Hey, he answered, voice soft. Zion asleep. He's snoring like a miniature freight train, she said. But that's not why I called. A pause. That woman today, she continued. Mia. She wasn't a parent. Adrian's tone shifted. What? She was a photographer. A setup. A story in the making. Damn it. They have pictures. Probably of you. Of us. Of Zion. I'll handle it, he said. No, she replied. We will. Adrian was quiet for a beat. Then okay. What do you want to do? She looked again at the photo on her screen, Zion mid-laugh. Adrian's face lit from below, her camera catching something no paparazzi could fake. We're going to tell the truth, she said. Adrian exhaled. You sure? No, she said, but I'm done being edited. 2 days later, The Modern Form posted a teaser on their website. Coming soon, a conversation with Maya Carter on design, motherhood, and rewriting the story. The image accompanying it was not theirs. It was Maya's. Black and white, uncropped, signed in the corner with her full name. The internet lit up half applause, half suspicion. Some called it brave, others called it calculated. But none of them could deny the story was hers again. That night, Maya stood on the balcony, the city breathing below. Adrian joined her, a mug of tea in hand. They wanted a scandal, he said. They got a woman who built a world without asking for permission. He looked at her, not touching, not speaking, just seeing. I'm proud of you, he said. She met his eyes. Don't be. Just respect me. That's enough. It's more than enough, he whispered. They stood like that on either side of a life they were building, with space and soft defiance. No declarations, no definitions, just a truth they didn't have to explain. The day Maya's Stitch collection debuts. Zion takes her hand and says, Are you nervous to show them your broken parts? She smiles, bending down to meet his gaze. No, she says, because I turned them into art. The gallery was quiet in the minutes before it opened, like a breath held in the chest of the city. Light filtered through the high arched windows of the converted Soho loft, casting long shadows across brushed concrete and glass display cases. Maya stood in the center, heart humming low and deep beneath her collarbone. Stitch was ready. Each piece glimmered softly beneath its own pool of light gold thread, crossing fractured silver pendants. Rings textured like healed scars. Earrings shaped like tiny cracks held together with diamond dust. Every flaw was intentional. Every flaw was art. It had taken her 5 years to gather the courage to create this collection. Not because she lacked the skill, but because she'd needed to become the woman who could stand beside her brokenness and not flinch. Now she stood here, not as a comeback, not as a confession, just as herself. She wore charcoal silk and no necklace, as if she didn't want to compete with her own truth. At her wrist, a thin silver bracelet with a knot in the center, one of the first stitch prototypes. It still bore the slight imperfection from when Zion had knocked it off the table and bent it. She'd kept it that way, a silent tribute. Across the room, Adrian spoke with the gallery curator. His hair was pushed back, his suit quieter than usual navy. No tie. He looked like a man who had been learning how to take up less space and listen more. When his eyes met hers, he didn't move. He waited. Zion tugged her hand. "Mom." She knelt down so they were eye level. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "Are you nervous to show them your broken parts?" She smiled, cupping his cheek. "No, because I turned them into art." Zion thought for a moment. "So, when I break stuff, can I call it art too? Only if you clean it up after." She teased. He giggled, then grew serious. "Are people going to say bad things again?" Her smile faded slightly, but she stayed soft. "Maybe. But it won't change the truth of what I made, or the truth of who we are." He nodded, wrapping his arms around her neck briefly, then running off toward the refreshment table like the child he was meant to be. Adrian approached slowly, hands in his pockets. "You've created something sacred," he said, voice low, reverent. "It feels like walking through memory." She nodded. That was the point. Not to hide what broke, but to honor how we learned to hold it. He looked down at the bracelet on her wrist. "Still bent, I like it that way." He hesitated. "There's a reporter from the Atlantic here. They want to interview you after the walkthrough." "I know," she said, "but I'll speak on my terms, like always." Adrian smiled, then glanced toward the door as the first guests began to arrive. "You ready for this?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I'm still going to do it." The room filled with that strange mixture of praise and performance that always followed art into the public. Murmured admiration, soft gasps, a few raised brows, some too casual critiques from people trying to sound informed. But most were still, moved. A woman touched the edge of a necklace that looped across a visible seam of cracked opal. "It feels like a prayer," she whispered to no one in particular. Maya watched from a distance. She didn't hover. She didn't need to. She had already spoken. Halfway through the evening, Elise Harmon from the Modern Form approached, drink in hand. "You did it," she said. "You made them listen." Maya tilted her head. "I didn't want them to listen. I wanted them to see." "Well," Elise said, raising her glass slightly, "they're seeing." Maya nodded once, then turned away, uninterested in victory, measured in column inches. At the far end of the room, she spotted her mother tall, regal, a cane in one hand and a spark in her eye. They hadn't spoken often in recent years, not since Maya had left after the scandal, but she'd sent an invitation anyway. No pressure, no expectation. Her mother had come. Maya crossed the gallery, and when they met, her mother didn't speak right away, just reached out and adjusted a curl that had come loose behind Maya's ear. "You finally used your grandmother's clasp," she said, nodding to a necklace nearby. "It fit," Maya said. Her mother's voice softened. "So do you?" For a moment, Maya let herself lean in. Later, after the lights had dimmed and the gallery emptied, Maya stood alone among the work. Adrian approached, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. I stole the last two, he said. She took one. They stood quietly. Do you miss it? She asked, surprising herself. He raised an eyebrow. The spotlight. She shook her head. Us. Before it all cracked. He didn't answer right away. I miss the quiet mornings, he said. You with your coffee and your sketch pad. Me trying to explain something overcomplicated about solar conductivity, and you pretending to listen. She smiled. I was pretending. You were sketching earring backs the whole time. She laughed. Just a little. He continued. But mostly I miss knowing who I was when I was with you. Her face changed slightly, softening but not falling. I don't miss who I was, she said, because I didn't know how to ask for what I needed, and you didn't know how to stay when it got inconvenient. He swallowed. That's fair, but I'm not her anymore, she said, and you're not him. So maybe what we miss isn't us. It's the idea of something that never had the tools to survive. He nodded, eyes low. Maybe now we have the tools. She looked at him, then not with longing, not with regret, just with the kind of clarity that doesn't beg for answers. Maybe we do, she said. But neither of them moved closer. That was the difference now. Love, when it's been shattered and stitched, doesn't rush back in. It approaches carefully, asking permission at every threshold. They clinked glasses gently. To what we broke, Adrian said. To what we built after. Maya replied. Later that night, Maya slipped off her heels and padded barefoot across her apartment. Zion was already asleep, curled around his favorite stuffed turtle, the glitter from his dragon tail still faintly embedded in his hairline. She kissed his forehead, brushed the hair back, and whispered, We're okay. He didn't stir, but his breathing shifted like even in sleep. He heard her. In the living room, her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. That was Art, and Grace, and you. She didn't respond, but she saved it. Some things didn't need replies, only memory. When Maya receives an unexpected invitation to speak at a Women in Design panel in Paris, the very city she once fled from, with a suitcase and a secret, she wonders. Can you return to a place that didn't believe you? As the woman who no longer needs their permission, the invitation came in the form of a heavy white envelope, addressed in blue ink, tucked between a stack of utility bills and preschool art projects. Maya opened it slowly, standing barefoot in her kitchen, steam curling from her tea. The letterhead read, Maison de Design Contemporain, Paris. Underneath, in elegant serif, we are honored to invite you, Maya Carter, to join our Women in Design keynote panel as part of our annual showcase celebrating innovation, resilience, and artistry in global jewelry design. She read the words twice, then again. Paris, of all places. She hadn't stepped foot in the city since leaving in the middle of the night 5 years ago, her career unraveling. Her heart torn in half. A suitcase filled with prototypes and a pregnancy test she hadn't dared open yet. Paris had once felt like promise, then exile. Now it was an invitation. Zion bounded into the kitchen, socked feet sliding across tile. Can I have 2 toasts instead of 1? I'm extra hungry. 2 toasts for the extra hungry coming up. She smiled, slipping the letter behind her back. She watched him nibble his breakfast, cheeks full, curls wild from sleep. He was 5, almost 6 now, and every day he looked more like himself, his own person. No longer just echoes of her or Adrian. A full, singular rhythm. She didn't want to leave him. But some doors don't stay open forever. And maybe, this time, she could walk through one without needing to explain why she left the first time. That night, Maya sat across from Adrian on the park bench near her building, their shared meeting place lately neutral, safe, open. The city moved around them in slow pulses, the occasional bark of a dog, a train rumbling beneath their feet. "I got invited to speak in Paris," she said. Adrian looked up. His face didn't shift into surprise, just thought. "You're going?" he asked. "I haven't decided." He nodded, rubbing his thumb across his bottom lip, a habit she remembered from years ago. "That city never saw you." "I know," she said. "But I did." Adrian glanced at her. "I saw who I was there. Not all of it was pretty, but it's part of the stitching. Zion will miss you. I'll miss him more." "Then go," he said. She blinked, just like that. "You once said you don't need permission," he replied. "I'm not giving it. I'm just clearing the space." Maya studied him, not with suspicion, but with the careful attention of someone who'd learned to love from a distance and forgive without forgetting. "Will you stay with him while I'm gone?" she asked. Adrian smiled. "Every second." Paris greeted her with drizzle and blossoms. The city hadn't changed. It never really did. The cafes still spilled onto sidewalks like they owned the concrete. Artists still sketched strangers without asking. And the Seine still moved like time itself, slow, strong, impossible to stop. But Maya had changed. She walked differently now, shoulders back, chin high, not trying to take up less space. Her hotel room overlooked the river. On the nightstand, she placed the silver stitch bracelet with the bent knot and a photo of Zion holding a toy solar panel like a trophy. She touched the frame, whispered, "3 more sleeps," then opened her suitcase. The panel was held in a vaulted hall, filled with velvet seats and camera flashes. Maya sat between a minimalist architect from Tokyo and a textile artist from Johannesburg. They spoke of materials, memory, motherhood. Maya spoke last. She didn't read from her prepared notes. Instead, she stood, stepped to the podium, and let silence bloom around her. "I'm not here because I endured," she said. "I'm here because I created, because I chose not to let what broke me define what I could build." A pause, breath held, one heartbeat, then another. "My collection, Stitch, is not about perfection. It's about what comes after. The messy middle, the quiet rebuilding, the stories you keep when no one is looking." She looked directly into the audience, eyes landing on a few familiar faces from years ago, journalists, designers, maybe even doubters. "And yes, I left this city once," she added. "But it didn't take anything from me. I took myself with me, and now I return not for validation, but to show what's possible when we stop asking for permission." There was no explosion of applause, just stillness. And then, real clapping, steady, rising. She let it fill the room, then walked off stage. Not triumphant, just whole. On her last day in Paris, Maya sat by the river at dusk, a croissant wrapped in paper beside her, her phone in hand. She opened the gallery app. There, waiting, were pictures Adrian had sent each night. Zion brushing his teeth with his shirt on backward. Zion asleep in a pillow, fort labeled Paris base. Zion holding a handmade sign, 3 sleeps, 2 sleeps, 1 sleep. She smiled through the ache. Then a new message came through. From Adrian, I told him bedtime stories about a woman who took her broken pieces and made the stars jealous. He asked if she was real. I said yes. And that she's on her way home. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Then she replied, "Tell him the stars aren't jealous. They're just grateful she didn't stay quiet." Back in New York, Zion launched into her arms the moment she stepped through the gate. His little body curled into her like he'd been holding his breath the whole time. "You didn't change," he whispered. "Not on the outside." She smiled. "But inside, maybe a little shinier." They walked out into the evening together, Adrian behind them, carrying her bag. Outside, the city pulsed familiar and impatient. Nothing had waited for her, but she hadn't waited either. She'd stitched her own return, thread by steady thread. Final scene. Weeks later, Maya stands in her studio, the windows wide open to spring, Zion's music humming softly from the living room. On her work table is a new design. Not silver, not gold, glass. Shattered, reformed, colored. Each piece carries the faintest crack, sealed with light-catching resin. No two exactly alike. She calls the collection Afterlight. She isn't trying to make peace with the past anymore. She's just choosing to move with it, instead of against. A knock on the studio door. Adrian leans in. "Dinner's ready. Your sous chef's demanding you." She smiles. "Tell the chef I'm coming." He waits. "Maya." He steps in, picks up one of the glass pendants, holds it to the light. "You're not finished, are you?" She meets his gaze, warm and clear. "No," she says. "I'm just getting started." Because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning how to hold beauty and breakage in the same hand and still reach forward. The end.